creative friends, it's Linda here from Linda Louise Art, and I am today going to show you how I created this Christmas card, part of my Christmas Pup series. Now I have made it using Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, and I use a Huion tablet. But I actually used to do exactly the same style of illustrations in Photoshop using just the mouse pad on my laptop. So that is entirely possible if you don't have a tablet. You can do it both ways. Or if you don't even have Photoshop and you just want to see how I do the drawing, you can copy along using just pencils and just follow along how I did the drawing. So yeah, whatever your purposes are, I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. So we're going to begin by creating a new fill layer, a solid colour fill layer, for which I'm choosing black because that's going to be our sketch layer. Now what I'm doing here is selecting the entire canvas using Control A, and then I'm deleting it by clicking on that fill layer, deleting the content. So now I've selected the paintbrush tool, and I'm just pausing here for a second to show you. You can use any brush you like. You can find loads of good brushes online, but I like to use a watercolor brush. I will put it in the description below the brushes that I use. Select your brush, and you want the size to be somewhere around 7 points. I usually use for my initial sketch and for the lines of my drawing. So that's what I'm doing here. And then we just prepare to start doing our sketch. Make sure you've got your paintbrush size where you want it. I'm just renaming the layer here to sketch because once you have loads of layers it can get a bit confusing to keep track of what they all are. Make sure you've clicked there on that colour fill section, and then you can just begin drawing. So in this design we're doing our lovely puppy coming out of a box, so I'm going to start by sketching out the box, but I'm not going to put you through watching me do this all so slowly, so I will speed up the video a bit here. Now as you can see, it doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't the final, this layer isn't even going to be visible in the final design. It's just to give me a guide of where to go. As you can see, I'm correcting myself as I go, so you can use your eraser tool to move things, change things if you get them in the wrong place or the wrong size, as you can see I did there with the eyes. And just get your basic design as you want it. If you want to slow this down, feel free to do so. So now I'm just selecting the text tool, and I'm going to put some text on the top of the card here. I'm just placing it here really so I can get everything where I want it. I will adjust that text later on. It's not going to have to necessarily stay like that. I do like this font I'm using called Sparkly Christmas, which I will leave in the description box down below where I got that one from. And then I'm just going to resize my text and position it where I want it, and I'm also going to just select and resize my design because I feel that I've done it a little bit too large there, so I'm just using Command T, transform, to make it a little bit smaller and get the lines where I want them before we go ahead with the design. So now I'm just going to add a blue background fill layer here because I like working against the blue. The sky is going to be blue. And now I'm just making a new fill layer with black again, and this one's going to be called lines because this is going to be the actual lines of our design. And I'm making the initial sketch layer that we did, I'm just turning the opacity on that down a bit, so it's just there as a background guide for the actual drawing. Now I'm going in and selecting my pen again. I'm making the nib a bit smaller, and I'm just going to begin drawing using my drawing pad, my Huion pad, but like I said, you can use any drawing implement you like on your computer. This is actually going to be our final lines on the design, so I like to be a bit more careful here. I'm putting a bit more effort in, using my eraser tool to clear any mistakes I make, and I will come back in later to firm up these lines, make them all look a bit better. But yeah, we just go through and draw in our design. So now we're coming towards the end of getting our lines in there. Again, we will come and firm those up later. It's going to be time to begin colouring in, which we're going to do again using fill layers. So to start with, we're going to create a new fill layer. We're going to select a colour, start off with the present here. So I select a colour, once again Command A to select all and delete, and then this time I'm actually using my eraser tool to colour it in, which you can do by switching your foreground and background colour, and anything you put on that layer in black will, with the eraser tool, will actually colour it in. And then I'm making my brush smaller, flipping back the colours, so I'm using white, which with the eraser tool will erase, so I can just neaten up those edges there. And now I'm just double clicking on that colour so I can just adjust the colour, which you can do at any point. That's the great thing about using fill layers. You can always change the colour at any point for any element in your design. I'm just renaming that so I can keep track of what my different layers are. So now I'm just adding a new fill layer. I'm using white to create a pattern on the paper, and what I'm actually going to do is, by holding down the Option key or Alt key if you're on Windows, I believe, and then clicking between that new layer and the layer below, the present layer, it attaches this colour layer to the present layer below. So anything that I draw on here will only appear if it's above the layer below it. So I'm selecting my watercolour pen because I'm going to add some stripes as a pattern to that present. So I hope that makes sense. This is an adjustment layer. If I was to draw outside of the red present there, it wouldn't have any effect. So you can see I'm going over the edges, but nothing's showing because it's an adjustment layer. It will only affect the layer I've attached it to. Repeat the same process again, just making another colour fill layer. This time I'm choosing a green, which is going to be for the ribbon on the present. So really the whole illustration is just this same process, and I'm attaching that to the layer below, making it an adjustment layer so it will only draw over top of what I've already done, colouring in that ribbon there. And I decided I didn't like the green, so we're actually going to make that a gold colour. But this is the great thing about these fill layers. You can double click on the colour at any point and change the colour, so you can have a good old play with all different colours in your illustration. Just neatening up the edges here. It's a bit easier to see now, it's a lighter colour. And I'm now created another fill layer, and I'm just putting some stripes on there. Going to repeat the same process with the bow. And really, as you can see now, I'm just speeding things up for you. I'm just repeating the same process. Now we're going to, in a second, do something a little different, which is to start to add some shading to some of our layers. So on our initial present layer there, I've created a new adjustment layer, but this time it is actually a hue saturation layer. Now I'm just going to pause here for a second to just explain what that is. If you create a hue saturation layer and again attach it to the layer below using Alt and clicking between those layers, it will only affect that present layer again, or whatever layer you attach it to. Then in your properties, as you can see I've done, you can create a darker effect. So I've gone down with the lightness and up with the saturation. Then I've done Control A or Command A on a Mac and delete to create an empty space, and then anything that I colour in now on that layer will become darker as I've dragged that lightness down. So this allows me to use that watercolour pen tool, as you can see I'm doing there, to create some shading. And this is where we really build up the drawing, the illustration, make it look good, give it some life, make it look a bit 3D by adding some shade in there. The great thing with the pen and tablet is that you can apply different pressures. The lighter you do it, the softer the drawing comes out, and the darker you do it, the darker the lines. I've created another adjustment layer now, another hue saturation layer, but this time I made it brighter for the highlights on the box, and I'm doing the same thing for the ribbon layers and the bow layers, just some shading and some highlights. And now I'm talking too slow because I've gone ahead of myself, but as you can see, what I'm doing with the video sped up is just going through and literally colouring in all the different elements of my design, the holly leaves, the berries, and eventually the dog too, and just going through adding the colour, adding the hue saturation for the shadow and the highlights, and as you can see, it starts to really build up that effect. Now I've just slowed down again for a minute here just so you can see how I do the eyes, because I believe that the eyes really bring an illustration to life, or a character to life. So whether it's an animal or a person, I like to put a bit of detail in the eyes. So I've just zoomed in a bit. I'm using the eraser tool here. I've got the black and white flipped round so I can colour in using the eraser, using the black colour there. Putting in the colour of the doggy's eyes, and then another layer, black layer for the pupils. As you can see, I'm going to colour it in, and then attach them to the white eye layer below so that they won't go outside of what I've coloured in the eyeball there, the white layer. And then I'm adding another hue saturation layer here, making it really bright, and I'm going to use my eraser tool, make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to do some dots of light in the eyes and then make it bigger still and bring the opacity of that down, and just do a couple more dots of light there because I think it brings a bit of life to our pup. And now I'm just going to neaten up some more of those lines around the eyes, around the whole illustration. You can always go back and correct things. That's a great thing about using layers like this. Going to get Pup's nose in, coloured, and a bit of light shine on there, and then I'm just going to create some shading layers for the puppy's fur itself. For this, I like to spend a bit more time putting some detail into this, so a lot of shading and a lot of highlighting on the puppy to really bring him to life. Give him that fur, that real fur look, which I think makes him look so cute. So there we go, adding some highlights. As you can see, it just transforms the illustration, doing these light and shade layers and colouring and drawing them in. And next, what we're going to focus on doing is adding an actual background. So we're going to create some sky. I'm going to make a new folder here because there's going to be a few layers for the sky, and then those layers can go within that folder. So we start off just selecting a nice dark blue colour. Same process as usual. We can delete that layer. We're going to choose a different brush here. You can use any brush you want. I'm just going for one with some kind of sparkle effect to give a bit of texture to the sky, so it starts to look like stars and snow. And you can play around with the brush settings as I have done here, as you can see, and then just try them out. Just reduce that opacity and start colouring in the background. I'm adding some more layers with slightly different colours, just to build up that sky in the background. And then I'm going to add a snow layer on top and just start adding a bit of a snow effect to the background. I like to just have a play with different brushes. You know, be creative, do your own thing, make the background how you like it, use different brushes. I'm just adding some snow here, some snow in the foreground, and then I'm actually just going to have a play with changing the layer to just see how it looks best, really. You know, that's the thing with learning Photoshop, is just having a play around at the different things you can do. I'm now adding a new foreground layer up near the top, so it comes in front of puppy and lines and everything else, and just looking at different brushes here that I can use to create some actual snowflakes near the front. So I'm going to choose another watercolor brush, and I've just changed the brush settings so that we have a size jitter and an angle jitter on there, meaning that every time I do a brush stroke, it will be a different size and it will change the angle. And I'm just building up the snowflakes here, falling down around Pup, just to make it really festive and Christmassy. And then I'm going to colour in some snow at the bottom underneath Pup. Just having a play with adding some opacity, some hue saturation as well to the background there, but I'm just colouring in the baubles because I forgot to do those earlier on. I'm just whizzing through this just to show you it's exactly the same process as we did with everything else, and adding a bit of shading there to the snow. It's all the same process, which is why I've sped it up, because otherwise this video would last so long. And now I'm just having a play with the text and the font there. I've changed the colour, I've gone into those the layer effects there, added a stroke around it so it stands out against the background. You can just move it about your text. I've added a drop shadow there again because I feel like the text doesn't show up much against the background. So I think what I'm going to do after that is actually lighten up the background a little bit, because I really want that Merry Christmas to stand out. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to actually add a new solid colour layer, change some of these colours to lighten up the background a little bit. And then using that lighter colour, I'm just using a really soft big round brush, and not at full opacity, at a low opacity, just to paint over the top there and just lighten up the background a little bit. Don't worry about what I was doing there, that was a mistake. I make them often. So yeah, just adding some, just having a play with all the background colours really, just to try and make it look a bit more magical and make the text stand out a bit more. And then adding a hue saturation layer here and really lightening the whole background up, as you can see, by just dragging the lightness and saturation levels up, and then drawing that in again with the soft round brush, not at full opacity, so that we can really see that text pop against the background. And now just one last detail that I'm going to do here is just to add a little bit of colour really faintly on top of that snow, because I feel like it just looks a bit bland at the front there compared to all the other lovely colours we've got. So I'm just adding a very soft pink in there, barely visible, just to give it a little bit of colour, and a soft blue as well, and just drawing them in with some soft brushes. And I think, guys, I think we are just about there with our completed illustration. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video today. Thank you for following along. I would love to see your final illustrations. If you have followed along, please do send them to me, linda@lindalouiseart.com, and I look forward to seeing you next time.